Aussies.
Oi.
Oi, oi. Geography Now Australia. Gonna check out another Geography Now video. We've been jumping around the globe.
Yeah.
Doop, 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 doop. We've done some in Europe. We've done some in South America, Asia, and now,
Oceania.
yes, Australia. The big old island down in the bottom of the world. Down under, some could say.
Yeah. No.
Nor. Love your accents. So
Yeah, they're so
if you're
great.
from Australia, don't be offended by our terrible attempts.
We're trying to be as cool as you guys.
Yeah. Oi.
Oi.
Throw a shrimp on the barbie.
You gotta, it's the one phrase that gets you into the accent.
And shrimp on the barbie.
Shrimp on the bobby.
And then the dingo ate my barbie. Sorry, I know. That's all you ever hear. But let's do this. Geography Now, Australia. This should be
I'm
interesting.
sure Australians all the time, they trying to get into like an American accent, they go,
Yeah.
oh my god.
Oh my. Yeah, true.
The like Cali girl.
Definitely. But Australia is one of the places I've always wanted to go. It's very hard to get there. It is very, very expensive
Very
to fly
expensive. There's especially right now, there is a lot of rules and regulations.
there. We're like going up like from where we are in middle of the United States. It's like 2 G's to get to Australia.
That's a lot.
That's a lot of money. That'd be a very expensive vacation.
Very expensive.
But eventually we will get there. So let's figure out what we need to know. All we know is deadly spiders, lights of snakes that like to murder you, crocs, Barbies, and wallabies and kangaroos.
Yes. Yeah.
And koala bears.
Koala bears. I was like, is this rope climbing?
All right, let's do this. Subscribe if you enjoy. Like the video if you enjoy. If there's more Australia stuff you want us to check out, let us know. Here we go.
All right, everybody, let's just all get it off of our chests.
Oh.
Koalas and kangaroos, boomerangs, didgeridoos, Sydney, Melbourne, Uluru, crocodiles, cockatoos, everything that will kill you. Shrimp on Barbies, that's not true. That Vegemite stuff that tastes like poo. Coral reefs and platypuses. Platypus.
I forgot about platypuses.
The plural of platypus. All right, now let's actually learn about the freaking country.
No, I like that stuff. Okay.
It's time to learn geography.
Even platypuses can
Everybody,
kill
I'm your
you.
host,
Yeah.
Paul Barbado. Today's going to be Australia.
They slap you with their
Really
tongue
cool.
thing.
Let's dissect the flag. The
Yay.
Australian flag has a blue field with a Union Jack on the upper hoist corner to represent that it was a former colony and a current Commonwealth of the United Kingdom, with a large star under it representing the Commonwealth, and the 5 stars on the right, the Alpha, Beta, Gamma, Delta, Epsilon, Crucis, to the right representing the Southern Cross constellation. All right,
Oh.
that was fun. Now let's discuss about the borders. Now, obviously, as an island nation, or rather large one, but still an island, Australia doesn't have any borders with any other nations, but that doesn't mean that Australia doesn't have some rather intriguing parameters. The country divides itself up in a rather intriguing way. Like the US, Australia has states, not provinces. There is a difference. 6 of them, and each one kind of has their own little flair and quirks, like Tasmania, known for being crazy. The things that are really interesting are the territories. Australia has 3 domestic...
Bless you.
Thank you.
internal territories and 6 overseas territories. Technically 7 if you include the Australian Antarctic territory.
Oh.
The Antarctic Treaty kind of bans anybody from claiming Antarctic soil as their own, which we will find out in future episodes that a lot of countries do a wonderful job at ignoring. The 3 internal territories are Northern Territory, Capital Territory, which is basically just the capital city of Canberra and some extra space around it, and the confusing little tyke Jervis Bay Territory. Jervis Bay was
Weird.
bought and developed to give the inland capital Canberra access to the sea, and eventually Jervis Bay split from the capital. However, it's still counted as part of the capital in elections. It's a little confusing, even though
Weird.
it really doesn't have much going for it, except for a small navy base and beaches that it kind of took from other neighboring towns.
Oh,
The
no.
most dramatic border area, though, would have to be the middle of Australia. For years, this slab of land didn't exactly quite know how to distinguish itself and has gone through 4 transitions in the past century. First, it was all South Australia, which didn't quite make sense because parts of it touched the northern parts of Australia, so it split into 2, 1 state and 1 territory. Then for 4 years, it became South Australia and 2 territories, the new one being called Central Australian Territory, then finally it changed its mind and went back to being Northern Territory. Central Australia is kind of like your girlfriend at a restaurant. What do you want? What do you want? It's not that simple! Finally, we reach the overseas territories. Although Australia has over 8,000 islands under its sovereignty, 6 of these islands operate as distinct territories, some of which sustain themselves with permanent populations. They are Ashmore and Cartier, the Cocos or Keelings Islands, Coral Sea Islands, the Heard and McDonald Islands, and the popular holiday spot, Norfolk Island, and the pleasant Christmas Island that gets attacked by huge coconut crabs every year. Finally,
What
Australia
the-
is home to arguably the most micronations in the world. Places like the Principality of Wye, Rainbow Creek, the Empire of Atlantium, and more.
What
These
the-
nations were developed by either small groups of people or a single person because they were doing things like protesting taxes and wanted to claim autonomy, or they were just kind of bored and decided to amuse themselves. But still, hey.
Weird, okay.
All right, now let's talk about the landscape, shall we? Okay, not all of Australia is a desert, okay? Only about 35%. Okay, so besides Antarctica, Australia is the driest continent on the planet, which explains why, yes, 85% of the population lives along the edges of the country within 50 kilometers of the
Jeez,
coast.
that's crazy.
Nonetheless,
That's a lot of
places,
empty space.
specifically around the coasts, actually have very temperate and even tropical landscapes. By the north, you find tropical zones and wetlands and rainforests. By the far edges on the east and west, you can find subtropical zones with lighter forests and plains. A little bit inland, close to the interior, you find grasslands and flat stretches of semi-arid terrain. In the southeast by Sydney, you find temperate, cooler, arid land with semi-tropical, yet slightly dry areas with an abundance of trees and plants. Then, of course, you have Tasmania, which is on a completely different level of green. Then we reach the deep interior where we hit the great deserts like the Great Victoria and
The
Great
Outback.
Sandy Desert. This area is famously known as the Outback. The Outback is
We just
essentially
said
the area
that.
of Australia with long open stretches of red and orange desert that lays out beyond the horizon
Jeez.
with few sparse populations of people that can be found
Is that a
anywhere. It
donkey?
has a dry, rocky, rugged
Donkey.
terrain that everybody assumes is teeming
Oh.
with a variety of poisonous insects and reptiles. And, well, I mean, it kind of is,
Ah.
but still, there's more to it than just that. Oh, and don't forget Lake Hillier, that strange lake that is mysteriously
pink lake.
naturally pink for some strange reason that baffles scientists. Now, if there's one thing that really epitomizes Australia, it would have to be its world-renowned beaches and coasts. People flock from all over the world just to enjoy the beautiful, pristine atmosphere of a real, authentic Australian beach. Just remember to put on your sunscreen, though. Australians actually kind of have a joke where they can tell who the ignorant tourists are. It's usually the
Oh.
ones who think they'll be totally fine sitting out in the sun for more than 20 minutes. Skin cancer rates are actually exceptionally high in Australia, and the population has
Whoa,
acknowledged the
interesting.
precautions that they need to take. Now, we all know that Australia is home to some of the most unique and curiously distinct animal species in the world not found anywhere else. However, Australia is also known as the home of many feral species. Australia has over 50 invasive species that were brought over to the land from areas mostly in Europe, and over the course of nearly 1.5 centuries have bred and spread like wildfire
Jeez.
all over the country. Animals like the European rabbit, red fox, water buffaloes,
Oh,
goats, pigs,
interesting.
even camels, and worst of all, the
Camels?
famous cane toad. They've all gone wild and have cost the Australian government billions of dollars in environmental damages and maintenance. Yeah, I don't really know how to
Interesting.
transition into the demographics from this part, so here's demographics.
I could have been like, talking of animal species, here's human
Human.
stuff. That was perfect.
That was, yeah, perfect
Today,
indeed.
Australia has a population of about 23 million people. Now, to many outsiders, Australia is kind of known as the place where the British sent their prisoners. First of all, that's rude. Second of all, that's only, kind of half true. Yes, during the early years of Australia's colonization from the UK, droves of convicts were sent to penal colonies in Botany Bay, which is now in present-day Sydney. Over 165,000 convicts, about 25,000 of which were women, were sent over the course of 80 years. Although the British weren't the first ones to discover Australia, it was actually the Dutch. As they came, they named the land New Holland and the adjacent island next door New Zealand after the province of Zeeland in the Netherlands. However, as we'll soon discover, the Dutch were really good at discovering places, but kind of not so good at colonizing and maintaining those places for themselves. However, most of Australia's population came from natural colonization from British non-convict nationals. Some would argue that Australia was kind of like the UK's version of Operation Backup Plan in case of America goes crazy. After the American Revolution, the UK tried to compensate for lost colonies by re-establishing new ones, and Australia was hot on the list. About 85% of the population is European. Asians make up the next largest minority of about 12%, mostly coming from China and India and other Southeast Asian countries like Vietnam and the Philippines. And by the way, yes, Australia does have black people, not many, but before the Federation began, Africans, mostly from sub-Saharan countries like South Africa, Mauritius, Zimbabwe, and Sudan, have historically resided in Australia. It wasn't until the 60s when
Interesting.
African assistance programs allowed many Africans to study and eventually move to Australia. Today, they make up about 1% of the population. One demographic of people that commonly gets overlooked, though, would have to be the native Australians, commonly known as the Aborigines, which make up about 3% of the population. Aborigines are a very unique and distinct people group that come from hundreds of different tribes, each with their own language and dialect, spread throughout the north, south, and central regions. Today, Aboriginal rights are a huge hot-button topic in Australian legislation, and about 22% of the land of northern Australia is Aboriginal owned. In 2013,
interesting.
Aboriginal groups actually banded together and decided to kind of make their own little state called the Murruwarri Republic, independent from Australia. The Australian government, though, doesn't really recognize this claim and just kind of brushes it off with a meh, as long as you don't cause a civil war attitude. Well, as you can see, a lot of people have come to live in Australia, but now let's see how Australia interacts with the rest of the world.
Oh man, who's their BFF?
Australia
New Zealand.
is, let's just put it very simply, a very popular country. If this was high school, Australia would be on the top of the social ladder. Hands
Oh,
down.
look at those
Everybody knows
shades.
something about
'Cause they're
Australia.
cool.
When it comes to friends, though, Australia not only goes for the cool kids, but also the strategic ones. Of course, Australia gets along with many of its Asian neighbor nations, specifically China and India, as large numbers of people from those nations live in Australia, and they do great business with them as well. Australia gets along pretty well with the islands of Oceania, except Fiji. In 2006, Australia refused to back up a military coup that overthrew the government in Fiji, and
Oh.
since then, things have been a little weird
Interesting.
between the two countries. In terms of their
Weird.
best friends, though, of course, New Zealand
New
would have to
Zealand.
rank in the top level, and they are basically like siblings that share a very similar culture, language, and histories as former colonies, whereas the UK also has a high priority on Australia's entourage as they make up the largest demographic of people ethnically and as migrants in the country. But finally, we reach the USA. The USA and Australia kind of have a little crush on each other. Australia is always there to back up the US in times when allies are necessary, and the US, well, I mean, we Americans, we just love Australians. We love their accents, we love their culture, we love their accents, we love their spunky Australian
We also like their
attitude,
accents.
and we love their sexy, sexy accents. Almost any Australian that comes to the US is immediately loved and welcome, even if they are slightly sociopathic. One sentence with that accent and we are smitten. We love you, Australia. In conclusion,
Yes.
Australia
Yes.
is just everybody
Oi.
loves Australia. Stay tuned. Austria is coming up next.
Everyone loves Australia. You heard it there.
Everyone loves Australia.
Everyone, you send us all of your good actors. You're just like, here you go. Have Hugh Jackman. Here you go. Have Margot Robbie. Here you go.
And then they just come in. Oi. Oh,
Oi.
here you go. Take the role. Take the role.
Here you go. Have Thor. There's just so many.
There's so many.
So many. Yeah. Australia. What we learned? Shrimps on Barbie. Kangaroo. Big spiders.
Platypus, importantly.
Platypus. He didn't say
Platypus.
anything about platypuses. I think their claws are like poisonous or something.
Really?
Yeah, I think so.
Jeez. What do they do even?
Do they just swim around in ponds?
Yeah, that seems like what they do, but like,
Where do platypuses live?
live in rivers. Look at him. He looks so derpy. He's just like,
Yeah, the best animal ever. He's
What
eating
the
a worm.
nuts?
Look at him.
they look so derpy sitting there. They just like float on the water. They don't like. They look like they're all. Look at, all these pictures of them in the water. They look dead inside. They're just like. "Arr."
How do they get eaten by crocs? Oh my gosh, look at what they're tying. Oh, look at the baby one. What the heck? Truth about this baby platypus pig gone viral. Is it fake? Look at how flubbery they are.
They look like. They got some rings. Venomous mammals. Back of their hind feet.
Excruciating pain. All right, don't try to grab a platypus when it's swimming
Unless there's a
away
little
from you.
baby that looks super weird.
Oh, hello. Platypuses.
Yes.
I want to go to Australia.
Yeah, it would be super cool, super unique experience probably.
Very cool. I want to go to the Outback.
Aye.
I want to do everything you
We can just
do
go
in
to
Australia.
Outback Steakhouse.
We could just go to Outback Steakhouse. We might as well just do that. The Australian restaurant made by two American guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and we can't forget about Steve Irwin.
Yeah.
He inspired me to go to Australia and wrestle a alligator or a crocodile. Crikey.
Oh, crikey. Now
Anyways.
his son's everywhere.
Yeah, his son's all over the place. Yeah. Anyways, nice to watching everybody. If you enjoyed, subscribe, like the video. If you want more Australia, let us know in the comments.
Yes.
See you in the next one. Bye.